and dangerous and conspiratorial and occasionally more seemingly far-fetched than you ought to be able to believe. And it is precisely because it is so fraught and so fragile and so dangerous that it was more than just news. It was actually kind of scary in 2004 during the George W. Bush administration when we learned how policy toward that part of the world was being made inside the Bush White House. Rick Perlstein reported at the time for the Village Voice that the top Middle East staffer on George W. Bush's National Security Council had held secret, formal consultations with apocalyptic Christian groups who wanted to make sure that American policy toward Israel was doing everything possible to bring about the second coming of Christ on earth. These groups wanted the Bush administration to make sure that the borders of Israel lined up exactly with what they thought the Bible said it needed to be in order to bring about the apocalypse. Seriously. So the top guy on Near East and North African affairs for the National Security Council met with the apocalypse seekers, met with these Christian apocalypse groups to assure them that it was biblically okay for the Bush administration to favor Israel giving up the Gaza Strip because, he explained to them, there is a specific way to read the Old Testament that shows that that would be all right and it wouldn't get in the way of the coming rapture. Jesus wouldn't mind. So Rick Perlstein, in 2004, he does this reporting. He finds out that this is going on in the Bush White House. He calls the National Security Council spokesman to ask him what is going on. And the initial response to Mr. Perlstein is, why would the White House comment on that? Quote, when asked whose job it is in the Bush administration to study the Bible to discern what parts of Israel were or were not acceptable sacrifices for peace, National Security Council spokesman Frederick Jones said that even his previous statements in this conversation had been off the record. It's an amazing thing, right? I mean, everybody's religious beliefs are their own. And by definition in this country, nobody's religious beliefs are better than anybody else's. Everybody gets to decide what they believe. And if you believe that getting every single Jew in the world physically inside Israel and making sure that the national boundaries of Israel are exactly what you believe is prescribed by a specific part of the Bible, if you think that's the way that human beings can start the apocalyptic rapture and the end of the world and the four horsemen and all the rest of it, then God bless you. That is what you believe. It does, however, become a news story and conceivably a matter of some debate when your belief that that's what you need to do ends up driving U.S. foreign policy toward that theological aim. And when the people who make foreign policy in this country are consulting with you about what the United States ought to do abroad, then yes, that is news. It's amazing. The George W. Bush administration was really amazing. I cannot wait until the National Archives someday finally takes over the Bush Presidential Library in Texas and we'll finally get an actual exhibit or a diorama or something about that part of the Bush foreign policy. That part where it wasn't just an accident that we were almost bringing about the end of the world. It was the point. That was the strategy we were trying to. But these end-of-the-world, bring-about-the-rapture guys were not just here for George W. Bush. They are still around. And they end up making political news every few years, specifically because they really do want to be politically influential. They are trying to use the United States as an instrument of their biblical views. And to be clear, this is not just the religious right, broadly speaking, right? Trying to impose religious doctrine on the country as a matter of policy. Trying to get the anti-abortion stuff, contraception stuff and the anti-gay stuff forced into policy. This is different. These are not people trying to change the United States because they want the United States to be different. No, the folks we're talking about here are the ones who are trying to use the United States as an instrument to achieve biblical prophecy. And their plans have a lot to do with Jewish people, with converting Jewish people to Christianity, with moving Jewish people around the world in geographically strategic ways in order to bring Christ back and kick off the rapture. These guys pop up in conservative politics over and over again, usually something to do with Texas. So in 2008, when John McCain was securing the Republican nomination for president and then running for president against Barack Obama, John McCain sought and received the endorsement of a megachurch pastor from Texas named John Hagee. Pastor Hagee got a lot of attention at the time, that endorsement, because he was really super rabidly anti-Catholic. He's the guy who called the Catholic Church the whore of Babylon, remember? But John Hagee's real kick has always been Israel. He founded Christians United for Israel. He's published books like The Battle for Jerusalem and Jerusalem Countdown and In Defense of Israel, which sounds good in a way, right? Like, it kind of sounds good for the Jews. This is what John Hagee means, though, when you really get him to spell it out.
God sent a hunter. A hunter is someone who comes with a gun and he forces you. Hitler was a hunter. How did it happen? Because God allowed it to happen. Why did it happen? Because God said, my top priority for the Jewish people is to get them to come back to the land of Israel.
God sent Hitler to get the Jews into Israel, so, you know, it was a good thing. Wow. This guy's a big, influential Texas televangelist megachurch guy. And so John McCain went and sought his endorsement when he was running for president, and then he got the endorsement, and then ultimately John McCain had to give that endorsement back when it turned out he's the God-sent Hitler guy. You can't take that guy's endorsement. And it turns out his whole idea of defending Israel is just getting all the Jews there at once so God can zap them all at the same time and kick off the apocalypse that we've all been waiting for. So these guys exist. These guys turn up every once in a while, and they are still around. They've not gone anywhere. Last year, a group called the Messianic Jewish Bible Institute, they held their big annual meeting to talk about their strategy to bring about the second coming of Christ and the end of the world. Their plan to hasten those end days is to proselytize Jewish people, to convert Jewish people, they hope by the millions, convert Jewish people to accept Jesus as their Messiah. This is how they are trying to trigger the end of the world. And last year, at their big event in Texas, their keynote speaker was Glenn Beck, to whom they gave a Defender of Israel award before, I kid you not, they all sat down to a big pork barbecue on the 50-yard line of the Dallas Cowboys Stadium. Yes! And it's fascinating. They use a lot of Jewish iconography and stuff. They try very hard to seem very pro-Jewish. But the big idea is to proselytize Jewish people and make Jews accept Jesus as the Messiah, so that once they've done that to enough Jews, then the end of the world will come.
There's a restoration of Jewish faith in the Messiah and an understanding in the Gentile church, and together God's bringing these to somehow fulfill his end-time purposes.
The growth of the gospel being received by Jewish people is promised. It's the end of the book. Help us to raise up an army, an end-time army. Every contribution matters. If it's $1, $100, $1,000, $1 million.
Give $1 million and we will convert more Jews so the world will end. Guess who's the keynote speaker for that group at their major fundraising event next week in Irving, Texas? George W. Bush. That guy, our last president before the one we've got now. There is, on the invitation, he is the marquee attraction at the fundraiser. He is the president in this evening with a president. And you can join him for the low, low price of $100,000. You can buy the president's package. Offer includes a personal geographical tour of Israel, plus company branding on promotional pieces, invitations for 20 people to the VIP reception, including photo opportunity with the President George W. Bush, and 10 signed copies of the president's book, and 10 passes to the new presidential library. All of that and dinner for $100,000. If you do not have $100,000, do not worry. Cheaper tickets are available. For $100, you can buy one of these volunteer seats, though you are not guaranteed this seat by registering online. For the $100 volunteer deal, you have to fill out a form and get approved. You actually, I should tell you, cannot find these pages online anymore, but we have posted screenshots of them at maddowblog.com if you want to check them out tonight. The originals were taken down off the web because Mother Jones just published an article about George W. Bush fundraising for this group. As far as we can tell, George W. Bush is still speaking at the group's event, even though all the information about the money he's raising for them has now been taken down off the website.